welcome to the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty. My name is Matt Pesaconis. I am your host. I'm joined finally back in studio, now that we've finally gotten our quarantining schedules correctly. I'm joined by my good friend Mike Andreski. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm glad to see your face, man.
I mean, it's nice to see in like the definition.
Yeah,
like you're in like full HD now.
I want to retract my statement. I can see your face, Matt.
Well, you know, it's like I can see you in full HD, high dynamic range, Mike.
Everything.
Whereas before it was all just through your really
pixelated,
bad, you know, I feel like I've seen everybody in just 720p this year because everybody's webcams are so horrible.
I almost feel like it's like the old boob tubes.
The old boob
the old
tubes.
standard TVs, like, and then when you got HD, like all the newscasters look completely different. Like, that's not that person.
Yeah, you
see
saw
all their imperfections.
What? They have pores? What?
You're watching football games and you're like, is that number 3 or 4? Oh, I can see his eyes.
Yeah, he had eyes?
What?
He didn't shave today? I can see that? That's crazy.
Or I guess when we're watching auto auctions and cars and stuff, like, oh, that is a 1972 Corvette. Oh, I see it now. I thought it was just a Hot Wheels block.
I do think that the televised auctions are a thing of the 21st century, definitely.
Oh, they're fantastic. I love watching those.
Speaking of those, I'm glad you mentioned those. It's a nice, awesome segue into our topic this week on the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We are going to be chatting a little bit about the future of car buying, and what we have done is we obviously ran into a couple articles and some information online, and we really kind of started digging into the process of, like, why do we have dealerships? Can we buy cars online? What's the status of all these auctions? And we're going to break them down on this episode of the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty, and we're going to get to it right now.
Ta-da!
Damn it, Mike.
You were too slow on that.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! He said right now.
Right?
Ta-da!
Right after this. Cars are made to be driven, and we really can't imagine a future without driving cars that we love. And the folks over at Hagerty obviously feel the same way, and that's why they're helping support our show. One of the many things Hagerty offers for people who love cars is insurance for enthusiast vehicles, including classic cars, trucks, motorcycles, newer collectibles, and boats. They also protect raced vehicles on and off the track if they're at a track day or high-performance driving education. So if you want to learn more, there's one place you got to go, Hagerty.com. You can get a quote there. You can look up any of your values on vehicles. It's a great stop. So go to Hagerty.com. So, future of car buying. Do we have a solid answer?
I don't.
And if we do, I think we should save it to the end. But I just want to know if you have an answer in your head on what maybe the future of car buying might be.
I have an idea.
Okay.
Now, if that's going to be the future, I think this past year has changed a lot in the realms of what car buying is going to look like, just because of the situation that we were forced upon.
Right.
And I think
he means the coronavirus of 2020, the COVID.
The COVID. House arrest.
House arrest. Yeah, I mean, and I think... Ooh, that sounded horrible. Excuse me.
It was actually the mic stand.
Mike is standing.
I was not standing. I did not move. My knees are bad.
So one of the articles that I saw, this came from the Hagerty Insider app, is, you know, the Hagerty Insider does go through a lot of data with regards to auctions. I mean, that's what they're kind of there for. They talk about the auctions. They go through the data. That way we can really have the most accurate valuation reports on Hagerty, Hagerty.com. Go check it out. Valuation tool. It's top-notch. But one of the articles that they came out with recently was talking about, like, the shift from in-person live auctions at, like, Scottsdale and the Mecum auctions and the RM Sotheby's and all those, and what they had to do during this pandemic of moving everything to online, and how does that affect sales? You know, and what we found was early on, obviously without big auctions, the sales data was looking kind of slim to none, but as 2020 grew, online auctions took off, and so many people just really got inundated with online auctions. And we're talking not just sites like Bring a Trailer, but even the big boys, Mecum, Barrett Jackson and everything, they moved over to online auctions. So
I think a lot of those ones too had an online auction. It just wasn't as, I mean, maybe you had like 2 or 3 bidders.
Right.
Instead of now it's, you know, 50 or something. Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's drastically increased.
Oh yeah, and I mean from April to October of 2019 to April to October of 2020, there's a significant decrease of auction sales to what we call private market sales, which would include things like Bring a Trailer and whatnot. But there have been not only more online auctions popping up, there's also been a lot more online auction websites. Like, obviously, we know a lot of people know about Bring a Trailer, but Doug DeMuro's Cars and Bids, and there's been a couple others. eBay Motors has been kind of revitalized their motor sales. But honestly, I mean, they said that the other side of this was how much of this is the collector car market. And people thought that the collector car market just like tanked in 2020. Or at least that's what I always get when I talk to like agents. They're like, oh, nobody was buying classic cars. And in fact, it was the actual opposite. More and more people were buying classic cars.
Which I can see, especially with the year that we had. A lot of people either selling off their inventory for, making ends meet depending on their financial situations, or they were looking to buy something, moving on to different things. They're locked up, doing some retail therapy. And what's the best thing to do in retail therapy is buy a new car.
Yeah, I mean, that. I can't lie. There have been some definitely, like I've definitely had retail therapy this year at some point, whether it be video games or podcasting equipment.
whatever is your choice of poison. But with that being said, I know one part of it is, okay, at the beginning of 2020, a lot of people were forced to adapt. Like, oh, we don't think this is going to last for very long. It could, whenever we were sent home back in March from my job, it was, all right, well, in the summer, we're probably going to be back here, and you're going to have like 2 or 3 months working from home, and then everything's going to be back to normal. But then it stuck around. And I think a lot of people are like thinking similar, like this is going to be here for a little bit. 2 or 3 months, it's going to go away, and then we're going to be good to go.
Right.
So a lot of these auction sites most likely had the similar approach, and then it's like, oh, crap, what do we do now? Well, let's use our technology to help us out as much as we can, and therefore the online sales started to come up. So the question is, I think part of all of this article is like, yeah, this is what the snippet we had from 2020 was. Auctions were down in person, a lot of online sales. What's that going to be moving forward whenever we get out of the pandemic, whenever everything goes back to normal? Are we still going to have these large quantity of online sales moving forward? And I think that's where the article goes, or the conversation that we would like to tackle.
Right. And I mean, John Wiley, who's the author of this article, really, I mean, and we talked about him last week. Yeah. Good job, John. Keep it up.
Guy.
Is that he basically says that, quote, note that when we talk about the collector car market grew in 2020, we don't imagine that everyone in the collector car hobby prospered. Just as a pandemic impacted various sectors of society differently, often in ways that seem arbitrary, so did the various classic car sell better or worse, depending on who normally buys them and when they normally sell. And they talk about a whole big breakdown that they performed, and you can check that out at insider.hagerty.com. But, quote, overall, though we can take some solace that our favorite pastime weathered the economic storm of 2020, a stable market, by and large, means stable values, meaning we estimate most cars to be worth at least as much as the people were paying for them pre-pandemic. So, I mean, like he's saying, is that not only did the market stay strong, it just kind of kept going.
Nothing's changed since then. They're
right.
Still valuable cars.
And, that kind of made me think, is like in this year where there was online auctions increasing, you would imagine that we might not see some of those showpiece cars that, the wild and crazy multi-million-dollar cars, but we saw quite a few this year sell.
I guess the question I would have to that is why wouldn't you? With the way that we have technology now, I mean, you could zoom somebody and look through the car. You can have so many HD. We joked about it at the beginning of this intro of you can see so much more with the quality of cameras we have. You can hear the engine start up. You can get all that with all the technology we have. Is what would be the limiting factor in an auction sale? You don't test drive them. You can see everything at it. You can look for all the scrapes. You can ask all the questions to get more details on it for like an auction.
I mean, I guess the only, and we're going to talk about this too on like how dealerships are changing, but it also goes into effect of like we talked about HD, and we talked about how like I see most people right now in 720p because their webcams are bad. You're only going to see a car as good as the other equipment on the other end.
It's true.
Right? And the one problem of not being in person is that you're also trusting that the person on the other end is as honest as they can be and transparent as they can be. And that sometimes isn't the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's the limiting factor, I believe, with online part of it, is you have to rely on that person to be trustworthy, honest individual. Like, they're not going to take a picture of one door and then Photoshop it or something to make it look like, oh, there's not a scratch there. It must have happened upon delivery of your
yeah, it must be
signature.
yours.
Like, that's your scratch now, not ours.
Yeah, hope you have insurance.
Good luck.
Sucker. Go to Haggerty.com if you want a quote. But also, according to Haggerty, I wanted to talk. It's always good to do a list. People love lists. They eat them up. And this list is the top 10 highest auction sales of 2020. So this brings a lot of weird cars onto this list. There's some cool ones.
Unique. They're unique. They're arts.
Well, weird is also a little trendy right now, right? Like keep it weird, you know what I mean? But there are some very unique cars on this list that I don't think I've ever seen, right? They're so unique that I didn't even know that they existed. Some of them I did. So we're going to go through the top 10. Okay, starting at number 10 is a 1971 Lamborghini Miura P400 SV Speciale. This car sold for £3,207,000. That equates to $4,257,007.
I think that's a 007 at the end. I don't know why.
Ooh, because it's pounds.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of
British.
It all comes together. I feel like you'd expect to see a Lamborghini, especially an older one, on this list. So it's not too surprising. I know the other ones are a little bit more rare and unique.
Yeah, and this was, so the P400 SV is the final and most developed and most valuable of the Miuras. It's basically one of the, if you think of a supercar, like an old school supercar, the Miura is what sticks out in my head. I mean, it was the first mid-engine, supercar ever created. But yeah, that's a crazy price. That was sold by Gooding and Company.
Yeah, Gooding and Company had a few of them on this list.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of weird. They must be doing really well over there in the European Union.
They must be doing good.
The next one, God, that was horrible. The next one is it's more my in my generation of cars. This
Our
is
generation. I'm not too much older than you. I know. 3 months.
3. Nothing. 2001 Ferrari 550 GT1 Pro Drive. Yeah, this is a race car.
This is a race car.
Race car.
You don't see too many race cars being sold in general, so it's cool to see they're still shifting hands out there. People still collecting them, obviously.
So this one was built by ProDrive. GT1's built by ProDrive, the British outfit that ran Subaru's winning World Rally Championship team before turning its attention to Ferraris and Aston Martins in endurance racing. As this is quoted from the Haggerty article, as Ferrari was busy steamrolling everyone in Formula One at the time and giving little thought to sports car racing, a Swiss outfit hired ProDrive to turn the 550 Maranello into a winner. And when it did, just this single car achieved 15 pole positions, 14 wins, and 29 podiums in its competitive career, spanning 2001 to 2005. And in 2004, it won the Spa 24 Hours and clinched the FIA GT Championship. So this car has some huge racing pedigree and some huge wins. Huge. RM Sotheby's sold this car on August 15th of 2020 for $4.29 million. I feel like Dr. Evil today. I also have an evil curled handlebar mustache today.
Evil. He has one. That's all I'll say.
It keeps the hair out of the mouth. It's so much nicer when it's curled. The number 8 car. So this car starts off a list of some, as you put it, unique cars.
Yeah, there's 3 of these, more or less,
on this list.
Yeah, so in the order different, as well. 8, 9.
Is it?
Yeah.
8, 9, and 10.
And it goes. It's fun too because this one starts with a 1953 Alfa Romeo BAT5. And then it goes
BAT5. This literally looks like Alfa Romeo was bidding to make a Batmobile.
But then it goes to a 7 and then also the 9. So we'll talk about them individually. They look
9D.
Well, whatever.
No, it's literally called the
I-
9D like dog,
I get that.
not 90.
I know. I was just keeping it brief until we went to actually discuss it.
Keeping
and
it
then
boxer.
Then we would have. Yes. This is a very punny conversation we're
getting,
having.
We're diverging a lot today. I think it's because I see you in person. I can actually see your reaction.
Or lack thereof.
You
just
can feel the joke just drop.
the dumbfounded response back to him with my eyes of like, what are you like, just whatever.
Just stop.
So anyways, the 1950 Alfa Romeo B85, they are very unique looking cars. And I think the concept of these was to get the lowest amount of drag. Now, I know Matt's going to talk a little bit more because that's his specialty, is to find the uniqueness of these cars and all the details.
I thought you were going to say that's Matt's specialty, dragging everyone down.
He is. So whenever you went to more details on this, instead of just the high-level stuff, we go to Matt. Matt, bring us the low gears. Drop it down to the 4 low.
The 4 low, okay. Well, the BIT was the first of 3 concept designs by the, this is built by Bertone, and it was the star of the 1953 Torino Auto Salon. Aside from its stunning looks, the B85 achieved a drag coefficient, like Mike said. Did you say the drag?
Yeah, they said they had really low drag coefficients.
2.23.
It gets better.
That's so crazy. And that was back in the 50s.
So that was without the aid of a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
So crazy.
Yeah.
That's even more slippery than most company cars designed today. That's so cool.
With wind tunnels.
Let's see here. The total haul, that's talking about the entire collection. I just think these cars look pretty cool. Now, I don't know why. Did we have a photo of them by the front?
Everything's on the rear, and I think that's by design as the rear, I'd say quarter panels.
The rear wings. They actually have wings,
Yeah.
and these are on the quarter panels. You know, like think of your old 50s American cars. You know how they had the wings coming off. This is definitely,
they're exaggerated significantly more, and they kind of roll in a little bit like a tidal wave.
yeah, and it's interesting to watch the development of this car, and it is also a split window like the old Vets too. So that's really, really cool. So the next car, the B85 is a black car with huge windows, curving windows. That just to produce that glass must be intense.
A lot of that back in the 53s, making all these round edges.
Yeah, I don't know if you could get glass made like that today.
I'm sure you could.
Well, you'd have to have a lot of money. I guess if you're buying any one of these cars, you have a lot of money.
This car sold recently for $4.9 million.
$4,946,666.
That's some couch change.
That
I'm gonna go sit on your couch over there. And we're probably gonna be able to buy one of these.
You know what? Go right ahead. If you come up with any money close
if I find
to that,
I keep it.
you can go ahead and keep it. So the next car was like we talked about. This was the B87, 1954 Alfa Romeo B87. It sold for $4.94666 million.
So exactly the same price as the prior one.
Correct.
But we had to list that again.
Well, I just wanted to let everybody know in a different way.
Hey, as a spoiler warning, the Alfa Romeo BAT 9D also sold for the exact same amounts.
So, and this car was produced the following year, the BAT7, which was even more aerodynamically drag coefficient. It was at 0.019.
Which is amazing for that year.
Yeah, that's just super crazy. While all 3 of these cars are running and driving automobiles, the BAT7 is also more refined than the BAT5 in that it had headlights. Which you couldn't tell by any of these photos, but I know that there are photos out there of the front ends. We'll post, by the way, all these on our Facebook page. Go to Facebook and search Midwest Motoring Podcast, and you'll find it. So, I mean...
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
I really think that, to me, I don't like the wing curved in like that. I know that it's more efficient. I'm curious to see if the BAT 9D had less efficient aerodynamics.
They don't list it in this article enough, so another spoiler alert.
Which, by the way, they sold for $4.946666 million. So $4,946,666.
Yes. So the following year, 1955, Alfa Romeo made the BAT 9D as well. So it doesn't go into the specifics of the drag coefficient. However, looking at the car and the design itself and them not listing it, I would assume it's probably worse than the 5 was. And it doesn't look as sleek with the rear wings not as aggressive. So I'm assuming that's going to be where a lot of the coefficient is going to be lacked into. But this one does look more of a potential production if they were ever to do it.
Like they got closer to a production vehicle. Yeah. Now, interesting to note, the article does go on to say that the Trio sold for $14 million, and that previously the cars actually sold in 1990 for $18 million.
It dropped $4 million.
I mean, that's a pretty good discount.
That is.
Now, this ends kind of the reign of like the Italian cars, because from there it goes mostly French.
Yeah, it's all one brand too.
Yeah. So number 5 is the 1931 Bugatti Type 55 Super Sport. Are you going to try to say that name?
I do not do well with a lot of names.
Fioni.
Fagani?
Fagani. I don't know how to say that.
Pagani sounds better.
Pagani, Ferrani. Yeah,
Pagani,
who knows?
Yeah,
this one
Italian.
sold for 4.6 million euros.
Or $5,051,054 doll hairs.
I think that's, 51,000.
It's a lot of Barbies.
Yeah, that is. Why would it be Barbies?
Doll hairs?
Oh, I got it. Okay. I didn't hear the doll hairs.
I emphasize
That's a lot of American collector dolls or whatever they are.
Right.
So, I mean, this is probably one of the better looking Bugattis on this list for sure.
I would argue that.
This is Giuseppe Fagani's take on the Type 55. I mean, it's kind of cool also that a lot of these older Bugattis, and not just Bugattis, but a lot of these coach-built cars are coach-built. So Bugatti started off with a lot of it, and then a lot of the owners took them to coach builders to make them their own. You know what I mean?
I always like looking at a lot of these old Bugattis. They are nice-looking cars.
They're just the class. Like if you think of like a 1930s or a 1920s car, this is my idea. Yeah, European car. Yeah. This is what I think of. The next one, the number 4 best-selling or top highest-selling car at auction this year was a 1928 Bugatti Type 35C.
And this is probably actually my favorite one.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I like. It looks like it's been driven. And it still has been loved, being a 1928, and it's still...
This car is a 100% survivor car, which is why when you look at the article on our website, or if you go to Hagerty.com/media and look up this article, it looks like some people would say it has a nice patina to it, right? There is a time and a place where cars eventually, if it is completely 100% original, even if it has a little bit of patina, has more value than cars that have been restored.
I agree.
You know, this has original paint, original, body work is still there. All the components are still there. This car sold for £3,935,000 sterling.
I don't know why you're going with pounds. That's a lot of people. But doll hair wise, it's $5,224,483 to be exact. And like I was saying, I like this original look better. I know it's not the super clean, detailed, deep black, polished up every weekend type of look, but I like the look of the car itself. It's more of like one of those bucket racers, I would almost say, like a bathtub racers.
I mean, that was the thing back then, is, the cigar-shaped cars.
Open wheel.
Yep. And that's kind of how Bugatti got their name in racing. They were some of the fastest cars out there. Now, this particular car, like I said, is a survivor. It's almost totally original, of 92 years old car wearing about 88-year-old paint. So even the paint isn't 100% original, but it's so close to being original that it pulled in a hefty price. The car did sell for $3.3 million in Scottsdale back in 2017 too. So there's definitely been an appreciation on that one.
Was that euros?
No, that was dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little under $2 million.
Mm-hmm. So number 3 is the 1932 Bugatti, again, Type 55 Supersport.
And this kind of goes back to the 1931 Bugatti Type 55 Supersport. They look similar, different color schemes. Obviously, there's going to be difference between them.
Yeah.
But
This is one of just 14 to leave the factory of Jean Bugatti's Roadster body. And according to Bonhams, just 11 of them still wear the bodywork. So that's super crazy that only 14 of these cars were ever produced.
imagine the life of this car. Like, if you could just go back and just have
If cars could talk.
Yeah, well, like, what did you do all your life? Sat in the garage. What else did you do? Looked at the wall. Oh.
But could it have also had an amazing life and been properly taken care of? So this was also the most expensive car sold at Amelia Island this year, which was prior to the lockdown.
Yep, and that was sold for $7.1 million.
That's so crazy.
I
mean, I guess, like we talked about, it's one of 14 cars produced in, what year was that? 1932? Jeez.
Yep.
That's almost 100 years old.
And honestly, this car looks better paintwork-wise than a lot of new cars that we have today. It's so pristinely taken care of.
It's a gorgeous car.
Yeah.
I actually prefer this next car, but of course it's far more expensive. So the 1937 Bugatti Type 57 S Atlanti. Atlanti?
Sure, we'll go with that. We're
Atlanti.
not very good at English alone, so
Yeah.
any foreign language just makes it worse for us.
I can hardly speak English.
Yes.
So this was again sold at Gooding and Company of the Passion of a Lifetime auction back in September of 2020. So this article says that unlike the other two Bugattis sold at the Passion of a Lifetime sale, the Type 57S Atlanti isn't a race car and has received a restoration, but it is still one of the most expensive Type 57s ever sold. One of just 17 Type 57s fitted with the Jean Bugatti penned Atlanti coachwork. The car sold new to Earl Howe, a luminary in the British racing scene who won Le Mans in 1931 and co-founded the British Racing Drivers Club, the BRDC. So the next owner in 1940 fitted a Marshall supercharger, and then it was made its way to English.
To an English doctor.
Yes,
I
doctor.
think the most interesting part of this story goes, it did sit for a while.
So it was a barn find, like an actual barn find.
So it was a barn find back in 2009. It sold at a barn find for $4.4 million.
So it sold originally as a barn find
Yep.
for $4.4 million, and it recently sold for £7.8 million, and that turns out to be about $10,433,965. Damn, is that an investment?
So this one was they did modify it. So they restored it. I couldn't think of the word at the top of my head. So the other ones were more or less as is. They weren't restored or restored.
And just so anyone out there who's thinking about it, like this type of restoration on these cars is meticulous.
Yes.
Like it is bringing it back to what it was meticulously, using very similar procedures as before. So it's not like you would think of a guy doing it like a resto mod or anything like that.
Yeah, like, I bought this panel off of eBay or somewhere else. I mean, I know.
Nothing against that kind of stuff, but like it was painstaking for
like
sure.
Handcrafted, molded, welded, and this one didn't fit exactly right. We're scrapping.
I wonder
it,
who
doing it
did the
again.
work.
I wonder how much the work cost. So if this car sold for $4.4 million, did they put in, another $6 million into this restoration? Or did they, make a decent profit off of it? Because I'm sure this cost a lot of money, too.
But I'm sure that they made a profit. Because if you think about it, $1 million in restoration work is a lot of restoration work. Now, there's some people that I might want to talk to about that. That might be an interesting podcast. There's a company out of Dayton called D&D Classics, and they do coach-built restoration. Like they work on Bugattis, they work on Bentleys, they work on tons of different coach-built cars, and they are some of the best metal work I've seen in a long, long time. They also do some stuff with like airplanes.
Yeah.
So doing the aluminum body and whatnot. So the next car, lo and behold, is a Bugatti. Weird how this works.
1934 Bugatti Type 59 Sport.
Sold for £9.5 million.
Or $12,666,600.
That's insane.
That's a lot of money for one car. It's another one of the race cars. I like this one as well.
Oh, this one was driven by a famous race car driver, Rene Dreyfus.
Yes, it was.
And it had podium finishes at Monaco and a victory at the Belgian Grand Prix. So clearly these cars, oh, there's the front of the BATs, but clearly these cars have not only, like, they're not only just rare cars, but they have documented ownership of some pretty amazing people too that have really gotten these cars to be elevated above and beyond just a standard, Maranello, or above and beyond a standard, Bugatti. Not that there really are standard Bugattis, but
I feel like it's amazing. It's depending on the person who drives it can actually increase the value of the car. I find that amazing to be.
I think the only car on this list, there's only two on this list that I'd really lust after, and maybe it's because I'm cheap, but also I'm a fan of like more modern cars, is the Miura and the Ferrari, the 550 Maranello.
Personally, I would agree with you on that. Weirdly enough, 2021 and us agreeing.
Why are we agreeing so much?
I don't know. I don't like it.
Now, some of these BATs, after seeing like the front, like that BAT, what is it, the BAT 5?
Yeah, I think the part of it that I would like to do
It's got red grills, man. That's cool as hell.
As I feel like the Lamborghini and the Ferrari, I would feel more comfortable driving.
Yeah.
But I feel like the BATs and the Bugattis, I'd be like, all right, this is staying in. I'm going to trailer this everywhere, and there's going to be like armed security around it.
I'm sure a lot of these cars are trailered from show to show, or if they're showed at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The show would be like somebody coming over to my private collection to view it.
I mean, if you have that amount of money, you probably aren't even doing that because you don't want people to know where you live or where you store your cars.
I mean, you can come over to my house whenever I have multi-billion dollars.
So, I mean, those were some of the top auction sales of 2020. So clearly we see that online sales of cars was going strong. Now, these were particularly classic cars. We weren't really talking about everyday cars. But that brings us to kind of another question is like, the future of car buying, as we said it, where do we see this stuff going? Because as you pointed out to me when we were talking, pre-podcast, is like there are so many new pop-up online touchless sales of automobiles nowadays.
Some of those
through
being
like Carvana,
TrueCar
maybe does it. I think there was one that was like Vroom or something like that.
Yep. There's Vroom. I like that one. I just like the name of it. Honestly, if I were to look at one, I'd probably go to Vroom.
I think I'd name my online car company Zoom.
Zoom.
I
wonder if Zoom would have.
You guys remember those old Mazda commercials?
Zoom. Yeah. Zoom. Whenever they there's the corner and the hand.
Mike's face just lit up after it finally
Mazda
hit.
Came out.
Like that Mazda Miata, and because he also had a Mazda 3.
What was it?
Mazda
CX,
Speed.
It was the last one I remember for Mazda commercials was the CX-9 for the Zoom. Whenever it was partnered with,
I think it was the CX-5. Wasn't? Oh, CX-5 came later.
Yeah, I think CX-9 was the last one.
That's right, on their
commercial with the Zoom. And anyways, so I know we're mentioning it as well before.
God, that sounded like the Pillsbury Doughboy. Sorry,
I did not poke him.
No, he didn't. He didn't touch me. We're 6 feet apart.
Yes. So I know we're talking a little bit earlier about COVID and everything and how our world's changed and a lot of these online auctions, car sales are still happening, auctions are still happening, collectors are still selling their cars, people are still buying collectors' cars. But where does that leave, the 99.9% of the population? So we weren't able to go to dealerships, and I know a lot of research and stuff was like, hey, car sales were down for a while, I couldn't get inventory. But then everybody's doing distance buying, online car buying, used cars, new cars. How are we going to get these?
I mean, there have been, for a long time, there have been online auction sites, yes. eBay, Motors, even I think Bring a Trailer has been around for a while.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember if there were some other like online auction sites.
Well, like the ones that were discussed too, like Carvana and so forth. Those have been.
They're a little bit more recent.
They're more recent within the last 10 years, but they're still.
Craigslist. That's why I was thinking of Craigslist. People buy and sell cars and vehicles on Craigslist all the time.
But is that considered online? Because I almost feel like that's just like classifieds out of a newspaper, just digitally.
True. I mean, I that's how they were kind of brought about as a digital classified. But think about like eBay. It's basically classifieds, right? Where people are bidding on stuff.
But then you're bidding for it online. You're not, before you see it,
right? But I guess we're diverging from the point I was trying to make, which is like, look, online sales of these, even if we had some in-person interactions of them, because there will always be a transfer of an item in person, right? We're not buying this item digitally and it only exists digitally.
A digital copy of a car.
Yeah.
We don't know. We could be able to 3D print cars and buy digital copies of cars.
We did talk about that. Go check out our podcast that we talk about. I believe it was
It was early.
Yeah, it was a pretty early one. I was trying to remember the car. It's like the C18 or something like that by Zinger. Yeah, it's a Zinger C18 or something like that. But it was a car built by AI and using what they call material or additive material printing, where basically they laser fuse material together using particles, right? So it'd be like tiny aluminum and tiny metal particles that they hit with laser beam, and it heats and welds itself to the existing particle.
Point is, we might be able to buy digital copies of cars and print them out at our leisure.
Using, I think, what they called UATs, their Universal Automotive something or others.
But as we digress further...
This is a podcast of divergence.
Yes.
But my point being is that like online transactions for used automobiles have existed for a long, long time. What we are kind of talking about is not only the sale of used vehicles online, but the sale of new vehicles online, i.e. the same or similar process of Tesla.
Yes, Tesla is more or less a direct sale from...
It's a direct-to-consumer sales market.
So you buy from Tesla. You don't buy from a dealership. I mean, it's a Tesla ship?
Well, it's a Tesla, like, showroom.
Yeah.
That will show vehicles and do some test drives. But when you purchase a vehicle, you're buying it directly from Tesla themselves, whereas the dealership markets are all franchise dealerships.
Yep.
So when you look at your local, when you look at your local Ford dealership, it's a franchise dealership.
Yep. So I know like Fred Martin's around here, that area. So Fred Martin owns it, and it's franchised through Ford. You know, if that's a Ford dealership, etc. So there's a lot of them. There's some bigger ones too, like what AutoNation is one of the bigger ones throughout the nation, and they're doing a lot of sales, used cars,
and the Penske stuff.
Penske's,
and a lot of that also is fleet sales. I didn't know that, but a lot of the sales data that they show from dealerships is also fleet sales,
which I could understand. I mean, the cars have to come from someplace, and you can't buy them again directly from
the manufacturer.
Which is always interesting. It's why can't I buy this product? Why do I have to go through a third party? Why are you marking it up to sell to buy it?
Right. And so many, like, I guess, and we did some research into this, and we pulled articles from Car and Driver, we pulled articles from Forbes, we pulled articles from Haggerty's website, we pulled articles. This is from BCG.com.
Could be generic and just say we pulled stuff from the web.
Well, I'm trying to give some sources,
yeah,
right? And like the information that we found was very interesting. And the question that we posed to each other was, why do we need dealerships? Why can't we just buy this stuff direct from manufacturers online by this point?
And so we were discussing it a little bit too, and it's like, okay, well, why would we need to go to a dealership? And the purpose of it would be, well, I need to buy a car. Well, the only way you can buy a car, or what we would do, is we would need to test drive the car. Is this going to be something that we want? How does this car A differ from handling characteristics of car B? How does it feel whenever I sit in it? What's the materials like? Is this going to be something I want? So that, like, cross-shopping.
It's interesting to note that a lot of dealerships would like you to think that that is the only way that you can do that, right? But I guess the other side of it is, like, dealerships, as of late, really do seem to be taking consumers to the bank, right? It's a pro-dealership market. And it's weird how all this stuff started. So historically, franchise dealerships really started to help aid the consumer.
We went for low with Matt.
A lot of the consumer laws around franchise dealerships were invented to protect us as the consumer from big bad car manufacturer, right? And to help protect our pocketbooks and give us some things like lemon laws and whatnot. However, as of late, and especially in the enthusiast marketplace, like the issues that we see is like, why is the Ford Mustang GT5 Shelby Mustang GT500 marked up by $20,000? Why am I seeing brand new Chevrolet Corvettes for $30,000 over sticker?
Or the Ford Focus RSs, those were marked up huge. You couldn't test drive it unless you put a down payment on it.
And
like
it's
those types of...
You couldn't even sit in the cars. I remember I went to my local Ford dealership and I said, "Hey, I'm really interested in the Ford Focus RS as my next car."
This was several years ago.
Yep. And I was like, I'm a bigger dude, and I've heard the seats are pretty darn tight, and I'd like to sit in it. And they wouldn't even let me sit in the car because it was going to get sold, and they wanted it to be sold pristine. And like, apparently, and this was even before COVID, right? I was like, apparently me sitting in it was going to taint the car. Now, you've all seen me. I'm not like a gross human being. So it's like, Mike, don't even Mike. I don't understand why. We all have our days, all right? I don't understand why they were being so standoffish about even getting in the vehicle, right? And that's not pro-consumer.
No, it's not. And a lot of it is a lot of pressure, too. I have a similar story. I don't know if it's just Ford dealerships, not beating up on Ford or anybody. But
I love you, Ford, but
yeah, we do. They make good
that's just my
cars,
most recent
so.
dealership experience.
I mean, I have more recent dealership experience, but I do remember I went to go test drive a Ford Focus ST before the RSs came out, and I was looking to potentially lease something. I bought my bike and was trying to save money but still have a fun car. And the guy said, we are only able to take this down the road a mile, turn it around, and drive back. And you can't take it over $2,000. Like, how am I supposed to feel if I like this sports car if I can't drive it like a sports car?
Right.
And I'm like, that's not very fun. The point being is there are a lot of markups on cars that is not fair. It's a dealership markup.
But you also brought up a really good point, and both of us did on, well, sometimes. Vice versa. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're just meaningless points.
That's true.
We're screaming to the void, Michael.
Yay.
But it's really like people say, and dealerships say, well, you couldn't take cars for a test drive if it wasn't for us. Well, we just gave two examples of how test drives were not allowed by the dealership. So it doesn't help anyone unless you just have a lot of money and willing to drop it. And as a consumer, in my current financial state, I'm never going to just drop money on something. I'm always going to want to either, like, for example, I went and grabbed, I didn't grab, but like I went to the store and held a bunch of iPhones to be like, how does this new iPhone feel in my hand? Does it feel any different? Is it weightier? Is it heavier? Do I like the square like sides? Like, is it going to be a good purchase? So I will always make sure that I'm trying to do those things of like, will I like this purchase prior to spending my actual money?
I think even prior to that is before, and with technology that we have, you guys are obviously listening to a podcast. Sometimes we talk about how we feel.
It's from the internet.
Yeah, how we like about like, all right, this podcast is about, the new Toyota 4Runner or something like that, and this is what our take is on it. Do you think it's going to be a good car? Hopefully whenever COVID starts to end and maybe you do some test drives and give reviews on those of like, this is something you should buy, this is something you shouldn't buy. You can start to get your research done before you even go to the dealership of like, hey, this is what I want. I just want to test drive it just to make sure I like it. I've heard all these good reviews on it. We have all this information at our fingertips, where prior to that, whenever dealerships were around, is the only way that I can actually know if I like this Chevy, this Ford, this Toyota, etc., is if I go and test drive them. I have to go and test drive a few different ones, but we have all that available to us quite easily. So we don't need the dealership as much as they need us at this point, I would say, almost.
I mean, yes. I mean, all retail sales are going to need consumers, right?
Yes.
And big box stores are struggling. So eventually, this idea of buying online is better than buying in a big box store is going to get to car buying and purchasing new cars from the dealership. And I think it's antiquated to believe that dealerships aren't aware of this and that dealerships aren't trying to. And there have been long studies about lobbyists and about unions and about all these things trying to make it difficult for buyers and buyers' rights. Right? They're making laws that try to prevent this stuff. I mean, for crying out loud, like Texas outlawed Tesla sales.
There's a lot of places where I think Ohio was fighting it for the longest time.
They were, but they finally were like, whatever.
They gave into it, but it took a lot of time, and a lot of the dealerships were arguing, no, this is going to take away the money from local economies.
I wonder if it did.
I think the Tesla market, as it grows, new cars, it does a little bit. I mean, because obviously, yes, somebody who bought a Tesla outside of going to a dealership and buying it, yeah, that money is no longer going to that individual's.
But Tesla has employees in the local marketplace.
They do.
And they get paid, right?
They do.
And so if they get commission or if they're getting paid, I'm just trying to say, like, there are holes in all of these arguments about buying a car online directly from a manufacturer in our current state is prohibitive and negative to consumers. What I really think, and there's a couple articles, and Car and Driver had one on this, is like what the future holds. And I really think, luckily, a lot of these dealerships have, as of recently, tried to embrace our technology and embrace the internet for car buying.
And I think this falls a little bit more on new cars, too, as we're discussing it. And the main drawback of why I would always want to go to a dealership is for that test drive. Now, if I'm dealing with somebody online or if I'm dealing with somebody in person, a lot of the reason people don't like dealerships is the long time that you have to spend in the dealerships. It could be 6 hours from the time you test drive the car to the time you actually pay for the car. You try to get
it's an all-day experience.
Yeah, you're like, all right, well, I need to clear my schedule to buy this car. Let me take
all right,
a day off of
I know
work.
that this is the car I want.
Yeah.
Now I got to go in, and I want to bring up some of the newer sales, like not derivative sales, but some of the newer sales models that car companies like Vroom, like Carvana are taking compared to companies like CarMax and our standard used car market. But I also want us to talk a little bit about like how, like, and we can talk about this part of it now because like car manufacturers and dealerships are changing and in a good way. We still have issues, like being car enthusiasts and performance car enthusiasts. Obviously, we still have problems with like the C8s being sold for $30,000 over sticker, right? Like, it's stupid that the marketing of that Corvette was it starts at $60,000. And you know what a base model, bare bones C8 Corvette sells for right now? $90,000.
Yep.
That's not a $60,000 car. And it's the same. Like I know I'm mixing my my business and pleasures basically, but like the same thing's happening right now with video games. If you try to buy a PS5, PlayStation 5, or an Xbox Series X, like you're spending far more because on the secondhand market they're selling for $1,000.
And I think part of that is one, that's bullcrap to do.
Well, it's consumerism and it's capitalism.
But the other thing is like, all right, don't buy it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not saying that that's not like. Legally speaking, if you have a product that somebody wants and you put in a higher price
and somebody buys it,
that's capitalism. I'm A-okay with that.
Yeah.
Do I like that? No.
Then
I think that's anti-consumer to do that. But that I put on the blame of the manufacturer, and I think that they should be producing more or controlling this better with their dealerships. So these franchise dealerships were originally developed to help to prevent that kind of shit.
Right, and it's
Excuse
happening.
me, stuff. I'm going to have to bleep that.
It's car horn.
Is like they were made to prevent manufacturers from doing just that. And now 30 years later or 60 years later or 100 years later, whatever it may be, the dealerships are doing just that. They notice that there's a desire for these vehicles.
It's the supply and the demand.
Yep.
So you have the limited supply, you have the high demand because it's a new car.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's excited about it. They all want it, so they're going to pay the upcharge for it.
Now there are shining lights in all of this stuff, and like go to the forums for any of these manufacturers. Corvette, like there's a ton of stuff on the Corvette forums.
Even
of
the
like
911s.
Yeah, 911s. There was stuff on this in the Mustang community with the Shelby GT350s. Right, it's like what dealerships are consumer focused that will give you either A, the least amount of overhead, or B, won't even raise above MSRP, and they'll sell you for a down payment, right? You put a down payment on of $1,000 and you're getting your car at sticker.
Which then this goes to like, okay, we can find those places through the internet, and we can discuss that with the dealership through the internet. So we don't have to go to our local car dealership with the $30,000 markup. We can actually shop around of like, hey, this new car is this. This person is offering more incentives on it. You know, not even just you look at trucks, you could look at cars, you could look at anything. Like just look at different manufacturers' incentives, how much they're willing to negotiate the price with you, and you can even get some of them to compete against each other.
And that's interesting because I think that's a good segue into talking about like Carvana and talking about Vroom and all them. Is like how does that process work? And I know a little bit about Carvana, and we should probably talk about it. Carvana was originally developed as like a online touchless sales process.
And now this is used cars. I know right now so far we've been kind of talking a little bit generically. I would say
mostly new right now.
Mostly skewed to new. So
skewed. Man, you skewed.
I did. I skewed that up.
Oh, we all skewed things up.
Yep. So that we were more skewed to new cars. And what we'd like to see.
My aunt had a dog named Skoo.
That's very interesting.
Everyone,
on just
shout out
platforms.
Shout out to my aunt Cindy and her old dog Skoo.
How does this?
R.I.P. Skoo.
Oh, poor Skoo. We're really
skewed this up.
So yeah, we're more talking about new cars and the process as what it is, and we can even deep dive into that more of going into. We don't make a lot of money on the car sales itself. It's a lot more of the warranties, the protection plans, any services that's done to the car. That's where a lot of new car dealerships make, and a lot of the incentives from the corporation that kicks back on, like, all right, you sold 10,000 cars. Here's a kickback of et cetera, depending on the cars you sold it and so forth. But with used cars, Carvana, Zoom, and so forth, is they are new platforms that you sell them your car, or you can sell the car to them, and they clean it up and so forth, and then they resell it online. And a lot of them will trailer the truck to you on a flatbed. You can look at different types of cars. You can sort it by the type of car you want, 4-door, 2-door, hatchbacks, colors of your cars, transmissions, fuel economy, etc., until you find out the ones. And a lot of these cars too are giving you like 7-day driver trial. So I can't drive this car before I buy it, but what I can do is I can buy it. I can see if I like it for 7 days. If I don't like it, somebody's going to come and pick it up for me, and then I can use what I paid for another car. Now, I'm assuming that there's going to be limitations of you can only do this like so many times before it's not going to be like, all right, you're not
don't build a YouTube channel based on solely just testing a bunch of cars and just rolling your payment into the next car. Yeah. Carvana will pick up on it and just put a kibosh.
Well, that wouldn't even be rolling. I think it's just like you have 7 days to like it. And if you don't like it, you can so if I bought this car for $15,000 and I bought a car for $12,000, it would be within that price range. If I had a $15,000 car and I wanted to buy a $30,000 car, I would have to put more onto it, change my loans and stuff.
Yeah, but that's not really a test drive. That's more of like a satisfaction guarantee.
Yeah, but they do give you like 7 days for it. But you would buy a car because you need a car, so I still need a car.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is like we earlier we talked about like trying to. I'm just trying to make sure that this is focused around the idea of like future of car buying, and like one of the big things that dealerships want you to know is that, hey, you can't test drive cars online, right? And this isn't really a test drive process. This is more like it. Correct,
yeah,
and it's yours, and everything's in your name or in the bank's name. And
no matter what, we have the money. Even if you don't like the car, you get you something different.
Correct.
But we
it's
still
not
have
even
money.
A down payment on a car. It's like we've finished the purchase process on this car. It's yours now.
You bought this product from us.
But they have a 7-day guarantee. I think CarMax even has like a 30-day or 10-day or something. I don't quote me on what it is. They used to broadcast a lot in advertising.
They have something where you can take it back if you absolutely don't love it.
Right. Don't love it, bring it back.
So I think that's one of the
CarMax also has some of the highest prices on cars I've ever seen.
I was looking before.
Sometimes.
Last year I was looking at Carvana. I watched a couple YouTube videos and some car reviews, and some of them were sponsored by Auto Tempest. So I was using like their website, and I was looking at it, and a lot of them had Carvana, and I was like, oh, look at this, and there's destination charges and so forth. And I was looking for a Mazda 3 with the 6-speed to compare a hatchback, because hatchbacks are rare. You don't have very many of them on our market. And I was like, I would like one of those, but I can't find them too often. So maybe I can find a used one, compare it to this other car that I would want, and kind of debate it.
Right.
So I went through a lot of the process of it. I even kind of like added one to my cart, and then somebody was like trying to like call me and stuff like, "Hey, we'd like to see if you would like to finalize your."
Why do they sound like that?
That's the computer voice that I had in my head.
Okay.
So that's what.
There's one of those chat bots that come up and like, "Hey, how can I help you?"
Yeah. So and like, "Hey, let's finalize this purchase." And I kind of just ignored it, and I was like, I don't really want to do this. I feel kind of weird about it, and I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't want to buy a car that I haven't test drove. Right. But point being is that it was a smooth process. It didn't take very long, and I would have been able to get the car within 2 to 3 days at a nominal charge. It was like $450 for it being delivered to me on a flatbed. And
which is the same charge that like CarMax will charge you if you find a car in one of their stores nationwide. Like I think the furthest I've ever seen it was like one from like New Mexico or like Arizona.
From Ohio,
right? That was like $600 to transport.
It's not too bad, and a lot of them even locally. If we're in Columbus and if we wanted something from Cincinnati's dealership, it was like free basically.
Right.
It's not bad just because they travel to and from a lot.
But at the same time, like for Carvana, the other big thing that they post is they have the car vending machine.
Yes, that's interesting. I know.
That is an interesting marketing piece because you go up to the location and you do all your shopping online. You already have like purchased the car, but when you can choose to pick it up at one of the car vending machines, and they give you a big like honking coin that you put in this big machine, and a big round elevator goes up to
the
where the car
theatrics.
is. Yeah, I mean, it is theatrics, and you know what? That sells stuff.
No, that's pretty. I would be kind of. I know my son would absolutely love it. Your son probably would as well as he gets older and realize I got to put this giant coin in this.
Yeah,
and I can drive
the coin's
this
like the size of my son's head, just
Yeah.
literally like a cantaloupe-sized coin that you put in and
Get your car.
get the car, right? And that brings some theatrics to the whole buying experience, which people do enjoy, right? It's a great way to kind of it's
fun.
It's the end of that buying process that then brings a little bit more joy, which is a problem with buying a car from a dealership. We talked about this because it goes from you're dealing with sometimes pushy salesmen or knowledgeable salesmen that go, I don't know, let me pull out the brochure.
Yep.
Or they're not even letting you test drive the car. Like they're saying, hey, we're going to sit in the car and watch you test drive this car. And we can only do that mile, right? That there and back, don't go over $2,000. And if you go over $2,000, you bought it. It's like, well, wait a minute. I'm driving. Like I have to accelerate. And occasionally you have to accelerate more to get either out of or into trouble. I just think it's silly that they're like, keep it under 2,000, unless it was like a brand new car and that was like the break-in period. But then you wouldn't really want to test drive them. But every dealership really should have a test drive fleet of valuable cars. Like they really should. I know they're going to sell through them, and that's fine to sell the car. But like, I think the manufacturer should be giving cars, and we'll get into our thoughts about that here in a minute. But I know that like that process boomed. The whole Carvana process boomed right now during COVID.
Yep.
I've actually seen 3 Carvana flatbeds because they've got the interesting body cladding around here in my neck of the woods in Central Ohio. I mean,
I've seen some too, like Vroom and Carvana, etc. And I'm like, oh, somebody bought a car from there. They're at work. I was talking to somebody, and they bought their first car from it, and they said it's been a good car. It was around, like they had it for say like 5 months at the time. They liked it. It was doing well for them. So you can get good cars. I know they still do like checkups and stuff on it. They don't just take it in and detail it and sell it.
Yeah, but they also don't do like servicing. You know what I mean?
No.
And we looked at, I think it was a Forbes article, talked about like the process that Carvana implemented. They have like a 3-tier process of selling these cars, and like they had reported, and I don't believe this is necessarily true based on geographical location. They just said on average Carvana is about $2,000 less on those vehicles. When I've looked, they've generally been either at or above fair market value.
And I agree, and that's one of the reasons I think I didn't buy the car from Carvana or wherever it was. I was looking at Broom. I want to say that one because it's more fun to say.
Broom.
Is I thought it was overpriced, and I didn't feel comfortable buying that car.
Was the car overpriced? Or was
Nationally?
it? Well,
No.
hold on. So was the car just overpriced in general for the sales price, or did it seem overpriced because of the fees associated with it? Also, did it feel overpriced because you didn't get to negotiate?
I want to say it felt overpriced based off of, so I didn't decide on the price of it until the end of it. So that would have included tax, title, etc.
Did they give you an opportunity to negotiate?
No, I don't believe so. Not at the time. There's not really, a lot of it's kind of like you're buying something from an online website.
Like click now.
It's click this, put your information here, click next. Put your information here, click next. What's your zip code so we can calculate the taxes, etc. Click next. This is your total cost. This is when you're going to get it. Click submit so we can process your loan.
It's the Amazon way. It's like click to add to cart and buy.
Well,
it's not the and even
it's 10 minutes instead of 6 hours.
Right. But also that side of it is kind of similar to like what CarMax, the dealership, says. It's like no haggle pricing, right? Like they don't haggle. They don't move on price.
Right.
Now I've gotten them to move on some cars. I didn't end up buying them, but it's literally like pulling teeth. It's the hardest thing. More so than getting a dealership to move on price, especially on used cars.
I've bought a lot of cars recently.
You have bought a lot of cars.
And I've gotten dealerships to move. Whenever I went to CarMax, the only reason I've used CarMax was so I didn't have to get the pressure sales. So I'd actually use CarMax as a test drive to see if I liked that car. and then I would go somewhere else because all right, they're no haggle price. This car is $14,000. I can go online and I can find it over at dealership B, C, and D for less than that, and then
Right.
I can email those dealerships and say like, hey, I'm interested in this car. What's the best you can do? I can come in and et cetera, and then go from there. As I know, all right, well, depending on test drive. So it's like, all right, well, I can get this car for $6,000 cheaper. It's got 10,000 miles less than the car that I test drive at CarMax, and I can even negotiate a little bit. I can get there and in the seat and be like, you know what, I like it. Can you take $500 off just for my inconvenience of driving up to Cleveland?
Right.
And they're like, we're this late in the process, sure.
$500.
I've done that. I've done that every single time, and I've gotten $500. $500 in my pocket is a lot more. $500 in my pocket is better than $500 in their pocket.
I mean, I'd be shooting for like 1,000.
Sure, but you do the hard negotiation at the front. So like, all right, take 1,000, take 1,000, take 1,000.
I gotcha. Can you take just another $500
like,
off?
can you take 500 off? And they're like, maybe I can do 250. And hey, that's $250 more in your pocket than theirs.
Right. That'll pay for mostly insurance for the 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think the current environment where car buying happens needs a revamp, and there's interesting options online for anybody. And I don't know that CarMax or Carvana or Vroom or any of these online retailers are the future, but I know that they are pushing the dealership markets to move forward with becoming more consumer friendly. For example, a lot of and I don't know if this stemmed from the dealers or if it stemmed from the manufacturers, like Cadillac was saying, hey, call us and we'll do a no-touch test drive that will drop the car off at your place. You sign a paper for somebody who's right there. They'll leave and you can drive the car for a couple hours and then we'll come back and pick it up.
I think the answer to that question is yes. I think it came from both. It came from the fact that
every time I saw the advertisements, it was just Cadillac or it was just Kia or whoever it was,
whatever company
it was, and they never had in there like visit your local Kia dealership or Hyundai or whatever like manufacturer was. It never stemmed back around to the local dealers. It was always just they did say contact your local dealer for more, but like I think that really stemmed from the manufacturer pressuring the dealerships to say, you're going to do this because we have an initiative to say that you should.
I think it would have been from both. It was, hey, we're not selling very many cars, or we can't because of local...
And that was for new cars, not used. But
yeah, I mean, we can't sell cars because of local ordinances of like, hey, you can't, your business is closed until X amount of dates. So it's like, hey, we can't do anything. What can we do? And then like, okay, well, we have a bigger marketing budget. Why don't Cadillac just make a giant, hey, test drive this Cadillac, instead of having all the local dealers spending the money of we can't even get people in our dealerships.
Right.
So I think it might have been a two-prong approach of the people reaching out to their franchise and saying like, hey, we can't sell this. This would probably help. And then the dealership or the, Chevy getting a lot of feedback like, all right, we need to do something. We need to move our product. This is an option. Let's just go with it.
I mean, I just wanted to mention that because there are some advancements that are happening. Mm-hmm. And things like TrueCar, Car Gurus, like any of these sites that talk about fair market pricing and talk about valuations of vehicles have really helped move things closer to a consumer-focused and consumer-driven market versus a dealership market. So, Mike, I mean, we're long on time.
Yay.
And I think really what we'd like to do is just get your kind of closing thoughts on what we think the future of car buying might be and where you think it might be going.
I think the future within our future is going to be more online sales. I could see something, and Matt and I were kind of discussing this off air, of Chevy having a test drive center where they have, X amount of models of their car, or I guess they don't sell cars anymore. They have X amount of their SUVs, their small SUVs, their trucks, etc., where you can get an idea of like, hey, this is what it is. This is the top options. Anything down from that, you're going to removing options. And you always kind of want to start from the top of like, hey, this is all the bells and whistles that you can get. Look how fancy it is. This is how it drives. This is how it handles. You can test drive it for 2-3 hours, or maybe even have a home delivery person where somebody goes and drops the car off and picks it up later that day. You can get an idea how it goes to your commute. But I don't really foresee it having a big overhead with dealerships of having all this inventory in the lot where, I buy something from Chevy, they can deliver it. With the used car market, I feel like that one's still a little bit harder for a lot of people because new cars, 10 out of 10, that car is going to drive fine. Used cars, 10 out of 10, you're not going to get that same percentage of a used car being pristine of I'm comfortable with it, or hey, this makes a really bad rattle on the rear suspension. Take some money off or get it fixed before I buy it. Do that work and I'll buy it for this price, etc. So I feel like used cars are still a little bit more gray area just because that test drive matters significantly more.
Right.
I do see like Carvana, and as the new generations come of, our parents are getting older and they're not going to be on the computers as much. They like to do the dealerships. But the younger generations, our generations, my son's generation, everything that they're usually growing up to has all been online. It's all been like social distancing, especially in this environment, Amazon next day delivery. I can see that being what people want in the future. So it's either going to be the consumer has to adapt and go back to the dealership, or the corporation's going to have to adapt and go to the kids. So overall, I do believe that eventually it's going to be more hands-off. It's not going to be a big showroom as we have today.
Interesting. And so I like where you went with that, because I think that...
If you agree with me.
I don't know if I agree. I like what you said, though. Having the dealerships kind of phased out, the manufacturers bring in test drive facilities to basically replace dealerships, where they would say, hey, in these big central cities, Columbus, Cincinnati, Chicago, wherever it may be, we're going to have test drive facilities that have a fleet of vehicles, and maybe they have like the top trimmed one, like with all the bells and whistles, and they have one with none of the bells and whistles, like the base trim. Well, the base, so you can say, look, this is what you get for X amount, but look, you drive the nice one, and then when they say, well, I was really looking for the base one, you look at it and go, well, this is the base, and they go, oh, there's nothing here. Maybe not that. That's kind of a bait and switch approach, but like I feel like they would have multiple options, and not all of them, but like, hey, this is mid tier, this is bottom tier, and this is top tier, right? And you can drive all three to kind of make your mind up on that. But that also then stems to how manufacturers want to do their option packages, right? But I think we will move closer to that, even with dealerships, where maybe manufacturers are like, hey, you get these 3 cars. These are specifically for test drives. And if they want to do touchless test drives, they can test drive them. And these are on volume mover cars that we're talking about, really. We don't really know. I don't really know what's going to happen with high-performance specialty cars. You know what I mean? But I do think that dealerships should move to a more transparent marketing and a transparent way of doing business. One of the big things that like all these articles talk about is how millennials want transparency, truthfulness, honesty, and they want ease of access and speed. And I think that is pro-consumer 100%. And that means that we, as all of these laws that make it hard for consumers to find out data on car sales, going to go out the window, or at least it should. We should know more and more about the cars and things that we're buying. As I knock my microphone out of the way, we should know more and more about that. And I think the internet is going to give us more and more of that. And so if dealerships want to stay relevant, they're going to have to become more honest, because one way or not, we're going to find out, right? Whether it be disgruntled employees posting sales data online, or if it's going to be, us just talking with people in categorizing the costs and things and putting on forums, like we talked about people doing with the brand new C8 Corvettes, going, hey, by the way, this dealership's not charging overhead where this dealership is, right? And I bet those dealerships that weren't charging overhead and getting the normal prices probably sold more and made more than the one. Well, actually not, because probably the supply and the demand, the ones that were charging 30% probably still made their freaking money.
See the sales numbers after that.
Yeah. So I'm looking towards a hybrid future where we still have dealerships, but they have become less of that caustic place. And the idea of a used car salesman, and I'm in insurance, so like it goes in terms of people trusting people. Used car salesman is like the bottom, and then insurance salesman is right above them. So I understand how those industries work, and I understand how truthfulness and honesty is important, right? And I think that that's a big play for dealerships, for used car and new car, is you have to be honest and you have to be transparent on this stuff. And when you look at trying to make money, don't make it on the consumer's dime. The lobbying that I think dealerships should be doing is lobbying to be able to make money from the manufacturer, not necessarily from the consumer. make it on, just like we talk about, like for me, it's like insurance premiums, right? Is if we've made our sales data, if we've sold so many models or we've hit so many sales, we should be receiving a commission from the manufacturer or something like that. Something that gets the earnest of financing the operation of the dealership off of the consumer, or maybe rebalancing that so it's not just the consumer, because obviously you want to sell a car at a profit, right? They want to make money so they can pay people to sell cars, but maybe making it so we bring some of the earnest off of the consumer and put a little bit more earnest on the manufacturer, right? And that's only if the dealership's selling, right? Have some goals and things attributed to that. And who knows? I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm not an economics person. I just know that from a consumer perspective, I would like to see more honesty, less price gouging and stuff like that.
I do know, and on kind of like the rebuttal to yours is they are getting better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I think part of it, too, is I don't know how many are true. I've heard stuff on the radio like they're not commission-paid salespeople, and I think that has an effect on it.
Well, that brings a lot, like, for example, when I worked at Best Buy, we were non-commissioned salespeople, right? Obviously, we did have bonuses based on goals and sales.
You had a bonus?
Yeah, I actually did good at sales. But like the flip side of that was that I can't talk. Sorry, that was probably really annoying.
That was super annoying.
I'll have to edit that out. I know that when you can tell somebody when they come in and go, "Well, you're just trying to make me buy," it's like, no, I'm not commissioned. I'm trying to do this out of the goodness of my heart and make sure that you understand that there are options for you and that these are the values and these are the things. It kind of makes you shrug off some of that expectation of they're trying to take me to the bank and take all my money. So,
right.
I mean, we thought this was going to be a quick topic, and then we just kind of like spiraled out of control and had a lot of divergence. And
I know there's a lot to it, right? I mean, we could even talk about this future. I'm sure some of our audience is like, "Don't do it,
stop talking."
But there's stuff, and we could continue to talk about this longer.
Part 2, we'll have a part 2.
There's a lot of moving parts in it. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of, I mean, it's a big industry, right?
It's a lot of research we're going to have to do.
Yeah, it's a big industry. I mean, I would like to do face-to-face research of just test driving a few cars.
Honestly, I would like to have a dealership. Like maybe we can talk to a dealership person to get them involved. Maybe they want to stay anonymous, but like I'd love to see what a dealer's perspective on 2020 and like the transition into the future might be.
Yeah, the future of it. I mean, I would like to test drive a truck so we can get some first-hand experience on it.
That's just dirty. Just go drive a truck. Just go ask them to let you drive a truck.
Yeah, I want to go test drive a truck.
Then go do it.
I want to. I will. I'm going to.
Turn your phone on and just record it. We'll put it into the podcast. So, guys, this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We are so thankful that you guys joined us for this one. I know it's been long. And this one, there's just so much interesting stuff to talk about car sales from 2020. But we are excited to look forward to 2021. And we're just so happy that you guys joined us on this episode of the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, keep driving.